Welcome everybody to our episode of Under My Skin with, and today we have a great guest, one of the most recorded drummers in jazz history. He played with John Scofield, with David Liebman, with you name it, so many great people. Welcome, the great Adam Nussbaum.
Grape? Woo! Grape! How's everybody today?
Good. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
All right. I'm grateful to be anywhere.
Adam, we have
sir.
a question for you. When
Okay.
was your first contact with calf heads in your life?
My first contact with calf heads was when I was given a set of bongo drums from my cousin when I was probably about 5 years old.
Nice.
And it was a little, little bongos with calf heads, and I remember, heating them over the stove to get them to tighten up, and that, because there was no way to tension them. They were just tacked on, so, you'd heat them over the stove and get them to tighten up a little bit. And then, all the records I started to enjoy when I started to really get enamored with jazz music, those guys were using calf heads. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there was that warmth and richness that I kind of enjoyed hearing. And one of my New York mentors was Mel Lewis.
Oh, wow.
And he always was using calf.
Yes.
So I used calf for a long time on the snare drum and even on the bass drum. Yeah.
Do you remember that bongo sound from your cousin's bongos?
Well, I just remember having fun and playing them, That's what I remembered. And, I didn't know that I never saw bongos with plastic.
Uh-huh.
These were old-time bongos.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's a certain rich tone and warmth and character from calf that, they still haven't been able to figure out with all the new technology, as much as they're trying,
So what do you think is the biggest difference sound-wise and playing-wise too between the synthetic heads people using today and calf?
Well, there's a warmth and a richness with calf, and there's a certain kind of depth in the sound and another dimension of character. And for me, I don't, as you can see, I don't use a comb, but I do use brushes. I really like the sound of playing brushes on a calf head because there's more texture, and the way that it speaks and vibrates, I find to be just a wonderful sound. You have to be careful with calf, and you have to realize the realities of the humidity and the weather conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it's a damp day and it's humid, the bass drum sounds great because it's absorbing the humidity. The snare drum may be a little soggy feeling. Mm-hmm. And then if it's a real dry day, the bass drum might be ringing and the snare drum will be, extra crispy. So, you have to deal with these realities, but, you just have to accept it. And if you want that sound, there's things you do for it,
Hans-Peter and I were talking about those things. What's the biggest difference in awareness and the playing on a calf? And I have a theory, and I would like to talk about that theory with you. That I didn't grow up with calf heads. I had plastic heads, right? Mm-hmm. So I got in contact with calf heads through an HP, right? Mm-hmm. And I was pretty skeptic in the beginning, but right now I only play calves at home. Even on shows, sometimes I take it with me. But the biggest thing I realized, and I would like to have your opinion on that, is that what you mentioned, that you don't want to destroy your calf head, right? Of hitting too hard. Right. And we all know that you are the master of playing light on the kit, and it's amazing. We listened to some records again, the last 2 or 3 days, and it's amazing your touch and your awareness. And I was thinking, it seems like playing on calf heads changes your approach and awareness. It gives you a natural threshold of like, I don't want to bash my drums.
No.
You know?
You know, it's a difference when you're talking with people. Are you talking with them or are you yelling at them?
Yeah.
And I never forgot something I heard the wonderful Billy Higgins say. And he had such a beautiful sound and such there was a transparency in his sound, and there was a lot of air in his sound. And he said, you want to make love to the drum. You just don't want to rape the drum. The whole thing about this is an instrument, you touch it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to learn how to touch it. Yes, we're using a physical strike to get it, but you want to try to get a warm sound. You want to try to get a warm tone. I also remember hearing Papa Joe Jones say, you have to learn how to touch the instrument, not just hit it. And you want to try to extract a sound, you know. I know a lot of people, they have incredible vocabulary, but they have a brittle sound.
Yeah.
You want to get a warmth and a sound that can work with the music. Now, if you're playing with a lot of electric instruments, it's a different character. Yeah. If you're playing with acoustic instruments, it's another thing. And you know, I think it's a time now where it's different than what it used to be. I mean, we're in a digital age now. It's not the analog world anymore. And I even, you know, realize that you have to play according to what the situation warrants. I wouldn't use calf heads in a heavy metal band. It's not the appropriate. Sure. You know, the whole thing is having the right tools for the situation. You know, I think one reason I've been fortunate enough to be able to play is that I always let the music tell me what I'm supposed to play. And my job is to help everyone else sound good. It's not about me, it's about we. And the thing about the calf that I love too, there's just a certain kind of depth to it. And it's a great sound. And it's not for every situation, but for certain situations, it's just beautiful.
We
Oh, wow.
You remember some of those? I know there's like thousands, right?
No.
But we picked a few.
There's a few good ones there.
What would be really cool if you have I'm sure you have, to every album, right? But
What's
if you
that?
have a fun story to one of those albums, in the making.
Well, I remember the Bartok recording with John Scofield and Steve Swallow. I believe I was using my Gretsch drums from the early 70s, and there's definitely was calf on the snare drum and on the bass drum. And that was I mean, I was so grateful to be able to play with John and Steve Swallow, you know, one of my heroes. You know, for a young drummer, there's nothing better than to play with an experienced bass player. You know, you want to get your groove together as a young drummer, play with an experienced bass player. If you're a young bass player, you want to get your groove together, play with an experienced drummer. Because like I always say, I'm always trying to get the spiddle-a-ding with the ickety-boom, you know? Yeah, and those were my drums. I think on this one, this was drums de jour with George Gruntz. Yeah, that was a very fine Swiss piano player, band leader, composer. That was a lot of fun.
The cover is amazing.
Yeah,
I really like your look.
I think I must have told a joke. That's when I still had a little hair. Yeah. And I also remember very much this recording with Dave Liebman, and I believe that's also calf on the snare drum and the bass drum, an old Radio King.
Oh, wow.
And that was a lot of fun to play that music with Dave and Eddie. These are, master musicians. I just have a lot of gratitude for being able to have played with such great musicians. It's given me an opportunity to learn, because every situation is something different. And, I try to get in there. And, this was pretty incredible, the Monk's Mood date, because there were some Monk melodies, and Eddie Gomez is playing the melodies on the bass, and that's not an easy thing to do at all. And these are two masterful musicians. That was a lot of fun. And the other thing I remember is the day before the record date, I had my son with me, and we were in New Jersey at one of those winter parks, and my son was snow tubing, and I think he was about 4 or 5 years old, and the tube flipped over. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope he's okay. And thank God he was okay. But I remember that specifically. That was the day before, because I saw him go fly in the air, and I'm like, oh no. But thank goodness he's okay.
Wow. Oh my God.
That was done in California. That was drums de jour. I have no idea what drums I was playing or what.
Okay.
Sometimes, I'll go to a record date. That date was done out in California. I didn't have my drums. So we just went and did it. And that one there, Speak of the Devil, those were my drums recorded at the power station. Is that the one? Is that the first one or the second one? I think, no, that's the second one. We did that
94.
We did that in Norway. Up at the famous studio up there. I think Talent Studio was the name of the studio. And the great engineer was there, Jan Erik Kongshaug. And that was using the house kit that they had, was an old Sonarphonic kit that Jack had played, and Jan Christians and everybody. And that was interesting because that session, that studio has very high ceilings. And it sets up a certain acoustic character. So it makes you play different. You're not going to play busy and dense in a room where all the sound is running all over the place. You might be able to play more busy and dense in a more contained atmosphere. You always got to deal with the sonics of the room. You can't change a room. You got to change the way you approach it. So I think that's an important thing. And, as time goes on, I think it's necessary for drummers to put themselves in situations where you have to play soft.
Yeah.
And, I grew up playing rock and roll when I was a kid. And, then as I started playing more acoustic music, I had to learn how to bring it down and still maintain intensity and focus at a quiet volume. It doesn't have to be loud to be intense. You understand me?
So good.
And this is very silly. This is great. Today, I definitely, you guys get a snare drum out for me. Yeah. I'm going to show the difference. And I'm using like 4 different kinds of brushes.
Nice.
I use normal wire brushes. I use those old Regal fat cats that were plastic. I'm using these headhunters. You'll see these are massive, thick brushes. And then I'm also
with the round tips.
Those are the Vic Firth live wires.
Yeah, right.
Those have got that's what I say, that's a brush with balls. Because they got little balls at the end, and they are loud.
Yes.
It's hip because I might play behind the piano solo with a regular brush, and then when the saxophone comes, I'll switch to these other ones, and the volume goes up like, 200%. And it's like, you better have some moves together, because if you don't, it's really going to be loud.
We're really looking forward to that.
Well, I want to talk about music today. There's, the thing is, now with all the YouTube and everybody getting up and doing a 1-minute little thing, it's like, it's doing the 5 to 1.
5 to 1.
And that's not music.
No.
I realize that as time goes on, I've learned the most playing with people who were better than me.
Yeah.
I was always the kid. And what's crazy now is that, I stop and I think I've been doing it for a long time now. And I feel like I'm beginning to understand it.
Oh, nice.
Which is a nice
Yeah.
thing. And for me, to have been around master musicians, not masterful, masters, people like, these gentlemen, and, they're still looking. Mm-hmm. There's that old expression, the higher you get up the mountain, the more there is to see. It keeps going. There's no destination. The journey just continues. And the more I know, the less I know. It kind of keeps going. And just to, one person, an example, was James Moody, the great saxophone player who played with Dizzy and everything. Are you still recording?
Yes, we are.
Moody was somebody who he knew I played with the young guys like Dave Liebman, Mike Brecker, Jerry Bergonzi, Bob Berg. He used to say, man, I want to play some of that stuff. He was 25, 30 years younger than them, but he wanted to be playing some of the newer, hipper stuff. He was keeping his mind open. And, he'd hear some young guy play something. He'd go, hey, man, show me that. To be around somebody that has that wisdom of experience, but still curious and humble to the music, it's so inspiring. I see a lot of people walking around, they're talking the talk, but, you got to walk that walk, baby.
Nice.
It's just the whole process of making music is a continual evolving thing. And any situation I get to play in, I get a chance to learn. I mean, I was playing with John Scofield. That's a great guitar player. John Abercrombie. And, these are masterful musicians. Dave Liebman, all these guys gave me a chance to try to go in and, I'm trying to help them sound good. And if they sound good, they're going to want me there.
Yeah.
That's why I've been working.
Yeah.
I'm not the world's greatest reader. I don't have the, incredible drumnistic kind of technique, but I try to get in there. And the main thing is to get your groove together and get it to flow. And that's where I'm at. I'm a flow guy. And this past week I've been loving watching the Olympics and also seeing how people deal with the stress. Because, you get a lot of these young hotshots who have gotten all these accolades, but then when it comes to this situation, they're folding. And, this is the whole thing of, as a musician or an athlete, how you can cope with stress and what the situations bring. You have to know how to keep that internal compass together. The whole thing, I remember Art Blakey, he said, it takes a lot of discipline to play. The discipline to have the ability to relax. And I think it's a yin-yang thing, and that's something I'm going to talk about today. You practice, so when you get on the gig, you don't think. You don't want to think. You just want to pay attention. Stay relaxed. Pay attention. If you're thinking about stuff, you're out of the now. We're a band. It's supposed to be we, not me. It's supposed to be a team effort. And you practice so you don't think about mechanics. You want to just be able to listen, react, and respond. And you got to stay relaxed, but you got to be paying attention. And a lot of people, they equate paying attention with tension. But it's a real yin-yang kind of thing. It's like, you want to be focused, but it's got to be feel good. You know what I mean? You want it to be, most of what I do isn't correct, but it usually sounds pretty good.
That is amazing.
Adam, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is fun. This is fun.
This is fun, right?
Thanks
Thank you.
for taking
But you've
your
been
time.
such an influence, you know, not even on drummers. I want to tell you, you know.
I think of, you know, my own history and my own reality. I was very fortunate. I grew up 1 hour from New York City. And in my town, there were some very good musicians. Actually, today, one of my guys I used to listen to when I was young is probably going to show up, Joe Corsello, the drummer.
Okay.
And I lived an hour from New York, man. So, you know, all my heroes were accessible. You know, it wasn't a video. It was, I mean, of course there were records. And, you know, records were great. And you'd read liner notes, you'd get information.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd go to the Village Vanguard and I'd be sitting this far from my heroes. You know, I could sit next to Mel Lewis, Roy Haynes, Elvin, Jack, Tony, Billy Hart, you know, Billy Higgins, you name it, Pete LaRocca, you know, anybody that was, I could sit next to him. And that had an indelible impression on me. You know, you can't replicate that.
No.
When you're in the room and you feel it live. And I think that's something that needs to get, you know, it needs to be propagated and it needs to be carried on for the future because that's what has the deepest impression on you. Not looking at the video, not, you know, reading it in a book, you know, being in the room and experiencing feeling the vibrations in the room and everything. There's
As you
nothing
always
like
say,
that.
right? Monkey see, monkey do.
You know, that's how I learned. That's how I learned, you know. And it's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. And the thing is now, because of the reality of the times, with everything being instant, a lot of the youngsters think, oh, I can get this. I'll Google this. You can't Google this.
No, you can't.
You can't Google this. You can't ask Siri. This takes time.
Yeah.
And I love the acronym for the word time. This I must earn. It takes time to figure this out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got my ass kicked by so many of the old guys. I'm amazed I still have one. but that's how I got better.
Yeah.
Playing with people that were better than me and knowing how to be quiet and take positive criticism from people that were better than me and had more experience. You know, it's always nice when somebody goes, yeah, baby, you sound beautiful. Meantime, you're thinking, oh, man, that's so... ugh. And then some old guy might say, maybe you want to think about this or this. And that makes you reassess. And
Nice.
I'm always telling everybody, you know, every time I record, I learn something. I learn what's happening and what's not happening. And I think it's necessary, if you want to get your thing together, record yourself as much as you can, especially in a playing context. You know, because if all you do is stay home and practice, you'll get really great at practicing. And the whole thing for me is making music with people. And the people I know that play the best hear the best. Knowing how to listen, knowing how to get inside the music. I remember something somebody said to me a long time ago, you want to get in it, you just don't want to get on it.
Yeah.
You know, are you playing it or are you playing at it? So I just have a lot of gratitude, man. You know, all these people here, you know, I'm just so grateful to have had a chance to play with these people, you know. So, yeah, but, you know, I was always the kid. Now sometimes I'm the old guy. Oh, boy.
Well, thanks for the inspiration.
Now we can learn from you and sit with you.
Well,
and
I have to, here's
hear
the
you
thing.
playing.
I remember when, you know that band, the Staple Singers? You might have heard that great song, I'll Take You There.
Yeah.
That was the daughter, Mavis Staples. The father started the band, Pop Staples. And she was getting the Kennedy Center Award one year. And she said, what I completely agree with. She said, you know, Pop's built the foundation. We just working on the building. All the people that came before me built the foundation. You know, I've stolen from everybody. Things I want to do, things I don't want to do. And I'm a complete mix of all that, and I'm just trying to, you know, just trying to keep it going, you know. I just have gratitude. It's an important thing.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Adam, for
All
your
right.
time. See you the next time when we talk about sonic moments that go under your skin.
I've got you under the skin.